Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the TFTuesday Podcast. My name is Zill. We are having a ridiculously warm snap of weather right now, and I am not a fan because the air conditioning is now off in my building, so I am just suffering TM. I'm joined by my illustrious co-host k-libra. How you doing, k-libra?
I am so tweaked on fucking caffeine and Monster. I sleep not good lately.
Not good.
But what I can say is that I am at least pleased by what I've meant to stay up for tonight.
Yeah.
I was implored by my pal here to watch a movie I had not heard of that came out this year. And holy shit, I can see why he said very particular things about it that made me so curious. And, before I get into it, I just want to remind people that if there is a piece of media that you don't like, don't pay for it. Don't hate watch it. If there is something you do like, yes, pay for it, or something that you think you might like. So I think people should support good art. And while podcasts aren't necessarily good art, you could pay us anyway because we could use that. This does take work, and a little bit of support with Patreon is very nice. I really would hope that someday there would be just a lot of people giving a little bit, and that will work out pretty well for everybody, I think. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, it helps us do things like go to MFF, which we will be in December, so... any support helps us do those things. It helps us bring the show on the road. It helps us bring it to places like ShifterCon, which is happening next week or next weekend. There's a whole bunch of things that helps us enable to do, and so we very much appreciate that support. And a shout out to, I believe, Cecilia, who joined recently at the associate producer tier. So thank you, Cecilia.
Oh yeah, thanks very much, Cecilia, and you. Welcome to the credits. I like adding names to the credits. Come on, make me get creative when there are many more.
Agreed. As we kind of alluded to at the top, today we are looking at another piece of media similar to how we looked at the Animal Kingdom last season, and this one is very different in tone and angle. But that does not negate at all. In fact, in my opinion, it enhances the incredibleness of the movie. So we're talking specifically about The Substance, which is a movie that came out this year. It actually premiered at Cannes and won Best Screenplay there. And it tells the story of an aging Hollywood starlet who turns to a new mysterious drug called The Substance, which says that it will yield a new, younger version of you that you can spend 7 days in, and before switching back to your regular body for the next 7 days, and then going back and forth. Obviously, things don't go exactly as planned, and I want to give a bit of a spoiler for your review just at the top very quickly before we get into some of the really good bits.
And there will be lots of spoilers because I want to talk about the entire movie.
Oh, absolutely. But I think one of the things I really want to kind of convey here for folks who haven't seen the movie and are maybe interested in it, we talk a lot about transformation on this podcast as it specifically pertains to animal TF. And trust me, that's my fucking jam. TF is a broader lens than just that. But in particular, one of the things that I really love about transformation when it's actually displayed in movies and such is when it's furthering a message too. And I think very much so in the Animal Kingdom, there was a message that was being discussed about. I mean, we talked at length about how it very much felt like an allegory for the COVID pandemic. This one is a lot more focused on how Hollywood in particular treats women and actresses, both young and older, and in particular had a lot of biting critique to say about society writ large, about the way that we view female bodies and all of those good things. I have not seen a movie in quite a while that really utilized transformation as a concept to get these kinds of messages across. And boy, does it fucking get them across in a very visceral manner at times. The one thing I'll say, this isn't a spoiler because it's part of the concept, but the kind of scene in which the first sort of like the younger self emerges, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's incredibly visceral. If you like any sort of like body shifting, changing, flesh changing, body horror, whatever you want to call it, 11 out of 10. This is going to be the movie for you. It's not for the faint of heart, but my God, the movie itself is fucking incredible, and it stuck with me hard enough that I was like, first of all, I need to make Libra watch it. Second of all, I need to fucking talk about it, because it really did stick with me to that degree. And, you know, to be fair as well, I'm obviously not unique in that because, I mean, it won awards at Cannes. It's, critically acclaimed and what have you. It's actually still in theaters, and I would very much recommend you go see it in theaters if it's still showing near you. But all of that to say, yes, it's all of these things, but also for our podcast specifically, I think it utilizes transformation and transformation tropes, to be clear, in such a wonderful, novel way that I was just like stunned. And truly, the climax of the film and the last 15 minutes are like jaw dropping. So that's kind of my spoiler free review. I don't know, Libra, if you have anything you want to add from a spoiler free perspective.
The movie will beat you over the head with the message. I just want people to remember that if you don't like your head get beaten in, you probably won't like it, but I honestly think that you should open up to the head beatings, and here's why. Because they make the entire thing very entertaining, very interesting. There are very ham-fisted ways to express a message, to make people feel a certain way, and it can feel so hokey, it can feel so trite. But when you're sincere about it and you just want to make people feel very uncomfortable because you know that's how they should feel, and you just do that without trying to be too clever or assert that, oh yeah, mine is different. It's like, no, we're going to magnify everything. The movie is a very saturated experience visually. And that's and usually with a horror movie, there's a very particular kind of look, there's a very particular kind of lighting and color choice and screen filters and things like that, you know, because they want to carry the mood. But no matter what the scene is, it's always very easy to see everything. It's a very clear, crisp visual experience. And I feel like I'm a fucking armchair critic now saying that stuff, but it's the only way I feel I can describe it. You know, I don't do movie reviews. I never even thought I'd get close to doing this on YouTube. I don't care that it's not to like 2 million subscribers like fucking Red Letter Media. But I think of how people feel when they're trying to really chew on why something like this makes them feel the way they do. And man, it's like I was telling Pez earlier that I was going to be watching this movie, and she said that she heard of it and that it seems like a very love it or hate it kind of movie, and I love it, and I'm glad that it's love it or hate it because it does exactly what it wants to do rather than trying to please everybody. Definitely please Zill and I and one other person who happened to be in on watching. It's like that's art to me. That's like the art of movie making. And yes, visually, I was just talking about how just things look in general, but those effects, holy shit, that is going to stick with me. Because Zill told me, like, it's The Fly. It's like The Fly. Really now. I gotta see this. And I fucking see exactly why. You people want your fucking prosthetics? Oh, well, you'll fucking get them.
Oh, you'll get prosthetics in this movie, let me tell you.
And I don't want to hear a single fucking complaint that, oh, they could have used that talent for this or that. The points is there for what it is. Without complaining too much, I'm going to reassert that if you're watching something and all you're doing is wishing that it was something else, then you're not engaging with the media, and you might as well turn it the fuck off. But yes, I really deeply appreciate this movie. And last thing I'll say about it without going into spoilers is just when you think the movie should end, it doesn't. But it never overstays its welcome. Like, it's over now, right? It's over. It's over now. It's over now. And it wasn't a bad question to ask. There you go. But the movie does end. I swear it does.
Yeah, quite poignantly too, I would say. And I'll also just say, I've heard kind of the chatter about this, and I just want to reassert it. This is probably Demi Moore's best film role that I've ever seen her in. Like, she's in the conversation for the Best Actress award at the Oscars this year, and she fucking deserves to be. Again, we'll talk a little bit about this after the cut, but, there's a few different scenes in particular where just that scene in isolation, I'm like, yeah, give her the fucking Oscar. I was blown away by the quality of acting. And to Libra's point about the, the visuals, there's this trend in modern movies where everything gets very desaturated and you don't have colors pop anymore. And it's like whoever was in charge of lighting was paid like 2 pennies, and so they don't know what the fuck's going on. That's not the case in this movie, as Libra said. Everything is really well lit. It's very well saturated. This is like, oh, wow, this is actually cinema, kind of thing. So I really appreciate them for that. And there were a few particular visual things that happened in the movie that I only caught on my second watch through, and I'm very glad that I did. So we'll probably touch on those in a bit too. But anyways, the last thing I'll just say again before we go into spoilers, very much not for the faint of heart. It's what it says on the tin. It's dead dove, do not open. So if body horror is not your thing, then you probably won't appreciate this. But if you do, oh, buddy. Also, I will just give them a shout out. There are a lot of needles in this movie, so keep that in mind. But also, there's no eye trauma. And that was shocking to me because that's always like the lowest hanging fruit that a lot of horror movies go for. And that means I can't fucking deal with it.
No, what they did with eyes was fucking awesome, though.
Yeah. There's stuff with eyes, just not eye trauma. So, really, really innovative. And, yeah, I think that's probably all we can say before the cut. So if you want to watch the movie without any spoilers, you can probably pause it right about here, go off, watch the fucking movie, because you really fucking should, and then you can come back. So
yep.
We'll put that timestamp in the I guess video. But anyways, we're past that. We're into spoiler territory. Libra, I want to let you go first. What are your thoughts on the movie now that we can talk about spoilers?
Okay, so one of the things that I really, really enjoyed, and I caught this early on, maybe you did too, the egg, right?
Yes.
Obvious thing of what it's supposed to do later on. And I was really enjoying the fact that she always wore that yellow coat.
Yeah.
That was really, really fucking good.
Really clever.
I really enjoyed that. The other things that I was really enjoying was how she fucking just because I looked at her and I'm like, yeah, you're still very attractive, you're still very pretty. The camera shows up, it's like, oh, she's an older lady, but wow, she's beautiful, and it's funny because I didn't know it was Demi Moore, and there are certain actors that are stuck in my head. Demi was not one of them, but I haven't watched enough movies. Mm-hmm. No shade on you, Demi. I just that's just me, not exposed. But yeah, beautiful lady. Seeing her do the really hokey 80s style exercise bullshit, and I got this impression that it was like the Barbie movie, but really fucked up. An immensely fucked up version of the Barbie movie. Because again, bright, colorful, clear. There was nothing in the movie that was hard to see. Anything you didn't see was on purpose. And
yes,
only on purpose. And if you're probably thinking that maybe they used, certain things to obscure details to cover over. No. There was fucking crystal clarity on every fucking thing. And that's another reason that the effects were so goddamn impressive. But yeah, the breakdown of this lady early on is made super clear. You know, you wonder just how bad it's going to get. It gets terrible. You know, I understand that the needles and everything. Like Zill warned you about the needles. I have a very particular fear of them, and it's a physical reaction. I can't help it. I try to steel myself. It's fucking hard. It really is. And this movie made it really tough. So, but when they wanted you to feel something, oh my God, the violence. All right. I know we're not even talking about transformation yet, but I just have to stress because all these things actually mingle with the changes. Okay. The violence is so. I mean, I don't see a lot of car crashes in movies that make me feel horror, and let me explain. Because when a car crash happens in a scene, it can create a lot of tension, and there are scenes in even like well-produced series or something like that where I'm just like, oh fuck, you know. Mm-hmm. But this movie, you know, she gets fucking T-boned because she's watching people. Yeah, excuse me. She gets T-boned driving because she gets distracted watching somebody take down a billboard with her face on it because they're trying to replace her. And she's everything.
Just been fired from her long-time running 80s fitness show on her 50th birthday, no less.
Yep, that apparently people love so much. And also she wasn't supposed to know that, but she did. And so she was very distraught. She gets distracted and she gets fucking T-boned. And that scene, I don't want to be in a car accident because of that shit. I think you could show that to people in driving schools if you want to really shock the shit out of them. Because I really was... It was such a cruel fucking joke that she was essentially unharmed in that terrifying fucking crash.
Yeah.
And the real harm just came to her fucking ego and her fucking psyche. Because, you know, she's there being examined by the doctor, getting told as much that she just walk out, and the doctor's being incredibly insensitive. That's another theme that really leans into the madness of the whole thing. Is a lot of people, there are like a few people that seem to care, and that's good, but overwhelmingly, the people that ought to give a shit just fucking don't.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't think a lot of people understand, but it's like Beavis and Butthead with how people act. I know I said that about the end of the movie, and that was just a delusion, but really, you know, when you got the doctor telling you, like, oh yeah, you're fine. Oh, you know, my wife loves you. Oh, you're this. You're a big fan. And you're sitting there, and you still look like you were just pulled out of the fucking car, and you're not even looking at her in the fucking face, and you start weeping, and your reaction is like, bye. That is, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to explain Beavis and Butthead to people that don't understand, but if you ever watch, like, the good episodes, I think you'd get it, because the population is just obscenely dumb, but then it's just really sad, because all I'm leading up to is the decline of this lady's career, her complete and total, like her being like utterly devalued as a human being, or even as a business asset. She's just fucking worthless now. And where there are little sparks, where you know, there's this fucking incredibly awkward guy who kind of makes her day a little shittier by accident, but he definitely cares about her and appreciates her and even thinks she's gorgeous, but it's not enough, and she just gets into making terrible choices. So why don't you pick up?
Yeah, well, one of the things that is a running theme throughout, of course, is the way in which the film industry just discards older actresses. I mean, that is literally that is the text of like the beginning of the film. And, it's also a critique on society in that, she, looking as incredible as she does, is still so like deeply dissatisfied with how she looks. There is a clear body dysmorphia going on here, which, is something that's relatable to a lot of people. You see, and just as an aside, first of all, again, Demi Moore looks amazing in this movie. Second of all, they say she's turning 50 in the movie. She's actually 61. So I just want to like underline that to just, again, show like how absurd it is that, Hollywood views women in these ways. And they have a lot of very heavy-handed lines to really get across like, no, these are things probably that are actually said today about older women and stuff. But anyways, she kind of gets turned to this substance really because she has this like self-hatred for herself and what she looks like. And it's clear that all of the, like getting fired from her show and like that poster coming down and all this other stuff, like these are all obviously the kind of impetus, but it's also very clear from the acting that this is something she's kind of deeply felt for a while. And when she kind of gets told, oh, there's the substance thing, like she initially throws it away, but very quickly picks it back up and, things kind of go from there. One of the things that is really cool about the scene where she undergoes that first kind of transformation is the fact that the second self kind of bursts out of the main person's back. So there's a lot of like the skin is like getting stretched out by like hands that are trying to like push outwards and all this shit, and it is extremely graphic and very fucking cool. I really like how they did that, and it's very interesting because they have kind of this effect to show, the consciousness is going from one person to the new person, basically. But the old body is still like breathing, and it's just unconscious. And so like, she gets like reborn or whatever, transformed into this younger version of herself, but then she has to like stitch up her old body's back, and then like feed it like on like an IV for like the 7 days. And so one of the interesting things that develops is the her that is in the younger body and the her that is in the older body start to view each other differently. And one of the hallmarks in the movie is that every so often they'll call the people who make the substance, and they're always like, you have to remember that you are one, and blah, blah, blah. And that is really stretched to its limit, in that the personalities diverge so greatly that like by the end of it, they definitely don't view themselves as the same person by any stretch. But one of the things that also kind of stands out throughout that kind of process is the camera work in particular when she's in the younger body. Like the way in which it views her own body is very deeply uncomfortable. And again, like the discomfort is supposed to be, it's the point. Like there's all these like gratuitous shots of like their butts as they're like, moving around on like the fitness show and all this shit. And it borders on pornographic, basically, the way in which the camera is looking at these bodies. And again, that is the point, because this is how Hollywood looks at women's bodies, and it's also how a lot of media is consumed around women's bodies. So I thought it was really interesting that they framed it in such a way that you definitely were feeling uncomfortable, especially when some things start to go haywire. Because, of course, we have TF tropes in this movie, and we have to, play along with them in a new way. So the kind of rule that comes up is, you're supposed to switch every 7 days. And if you don't switch on the end of the 7th day, well, first of all, your food that's being fed to your old body is starting to run out. And second of all, that means that the older body is going to start aging. And so the first time she overstays a little bit, she only overstays maybe a few hours. But when she wakes up in the morning in her normal older body, she sees that her finger has gone all withered and old. And it's a really well done prosthetic. They said in the making of it that it was one of the thinnest prosthetics that they'd ever had to make because they really wanted it to be as seamless as possible. So very, very innovative and cool shit. And so they find out that, anytime you overstay it, then, part of your body is going to age. And you'd think, this first kind of brush with it, maybe that would be like well, shit, this happened the one time. I don't want this to happen again, whatever. But in a sign again of how much the personalities are diverging, this doesn't deter the younger self. In fact, it makes the younger self not want to spend time in the older body. So each time they switch afterwards, more gets taken away from the older version of herself. And it's funny, and Libra kind of alluded to this earlier, in almost every single case where a decision is supposed to be made, the worst decision is made every single time. And you're kind of just sitting there watching it going, oh my God, sometimes they're picking the worst option that I couldn't even have thought of. Like, how did you think of that option? How did you pick the worst possible option in every single case? And, it's just so incredible how they continue to up the stakes every single time. Mm-hmm. I think one scene I really want to highlight, though, and this is, again, just after only the finger's been affected, she is feeling really down because she's seeing all of these pictures of her younger self. There's like a billboard outside her house now of her younger self, again, to really hammer home the point. And, she decides to take up that guy who was kind of awkward and gave her number or his number. She takes him up on like going out with him. And so she's preparing for the night to go out, doing her makeup and such. And she keeps running into reminders of her younger self. So she's trying to leave and it's kind of showing, time is passing. But every time she tries to leave, there's another reminder. And then she goes back and she puts on more makeup or she changes what she's wearing or she tries to conceal more of herself because it's not as good as the younger part until she just has a total breakdown and is basically clawing at her face to get off the makeup because she's just so distraught by how she looks. And that scene alone, I was like, okay, yeah, give her the fucking Best Actress award because my God, the way that she manages to act. But as we kind of alluded to, this obviously is going towards some not good shit. And what happens, at the halfway point of the movie is the younger self just stops switching for 3 fucking months. So by the time she goes back, when she absolutely has to, she's like a hunchbacked old woman with no hair left. And the fucking prosthetics work on this is absolutely insane. Again, if people saying they want practical effects, here you fucking go. This movie has them in the most incredible ways, and we haven't even gone all the way. But I was really curious to hear what you kind of felt when you saw that kind of phase and what she was then going to decide to do and what was kind of going through your head at that point, Libra.
Well, decide to do at which point, because there was a few decisions even before we got all the way up to the hunched over form of herself.
Well, give me some thoughts along the way then. What was going through your head in the lead up to that?
Okay, so I knew that she was going to start pushing the limit. That was very clear. So, yeah, pretty predictable. But you want to see exactly how bad it gets anyway. And so there I was, and as I told Zill, I agreed to get on this plane that was in a nosedive, and it was very exciting in some of the best worst ways. You can parse that sentence on your
Blurst.
fucking own. I wouldn't even say that. It was, I think, the most potent tool the movie used was the "you are one" thing. And again, it's one of the things that they beat you over the head with, but along the way they show it in such a vivid way. It shows such discord and a break from one's own identity, and because they remember each other, and at least you see, even I'm doing it. We're both doing it, as treating them as two different people. But it's hard. It's hard to help that because she treats herself as two different people at that point. But she remembers everything. That's why she gets depressed brutally, and her life just becomes more lethargic, and she's just killing time. When people say they're killing time and they're really not doing anything, this movie shows what it really is like to effectively actually fucking kill time, and it is so fucking depressing. And she's just waiting. I was thinking, in her position, to avoid going crazy, I'd try to have myself just I would try to build myself up in another way. Like, well, if I can't be fucking pretty, I'll be, I don't know, anything. I'd be a fucking assassin, okay? Or something that I could throw myself into, that for like a whole fucking week nobody expects me to do anything. But of course, if I were in her position, maybe I would have self-destructed in another way, because choosing to do this, it's fucking terrifying. What we got to spell out for you is, when Zil said that, it's like, oh, you see the new self bursting out the back. The things you have to do, you have to acknowledge that's you on the floor. It's weirdly not a hollow husk, even though an entire other human body was birthed out the back like a cocoon. It's somehow not hollow. It doesn't make any real sense, but neither does the fact that it happened in the first place. And you have to sew up your own body, and you have to look after it, and you have to realize that you got to go back into that, and just all that stuff just really, like, the fucking just the descent. And it's so good to put you in the position of, I'd probably fucking snap too, or can I take that? And it changes her as a person, it divides her as a person, and it makes the actual transformation really fucking sad and very scary. Because what happens is that, yes, the younger version wants to just not go back, but she must, and she absolutely has to. But of course, every single time she pushes it, tries to get clever, doesn't really think about the consequences, ignores all the rules very easily, because that's the depths of insecurity that she's been brought to. Mm-hmm. She keeps making it worse for herself, and as she fucking transitions back into the new one, and she wakes up, and there's another huge part of her now. There's like her leg is, you see, it's not just withered and old, it's almost as if you could somehow have a part that's very old and also somehow dead. It's really fucked up, and it's really weird, and I kept thinking to myself, that part's just gonna slough off, isn't it? And it didn't, and somehow it still worked in some really fucked up way. But it was pure fucking suffering and agony. And, they kept changing in terms of personality. And, she started to hate herself in a way that I've never seen before. I don't think anybody's ever really seen before. That when you wake up and you actually spite yourself, because you start to remember that, oh, yes, because you ate a certain way, it created a nightmare for the younger version of you, and then the younger version of you is like, oh yeah, well, fuck you, I'm gonna take even more from you, and you're gonna wake up uglier, and it's actually destroying yourself until that comes to a head. And in the meantime, she's still being treated like garbage.
Oh yeah.
She likes the attention, but she's still absolutely being treated like garbage. Fucking shits try to hit on her. The same piece of garbage producer, I'm pretty sure he's a producer or whatever, is still being that characteristic piece of trash, and nothing really changes, other than now people like her enough again to use her, the way they did before.
Yeah. Well, there's this delicious irony in that, like when she has her younger self, she almost immediately takes over her old like TV show, basically, and it's like, oh, this is the younger version, and like, yeah, there's something delicious in, oh, they don't even know that it's the same person, kind of thing. But as great as that feels for maybe like a little while, it quickly becomes apparent that like they are just using her the way that they were using her other self too. And I think one of the central messages of the movie is how Hollywood pits like older actresses against younger actresses and tries to kind of impede any sort of solidarity, because on the one hand they are trying to push older women out with younger ones, but at the same time they're also trying to like incite that hatred between them. And so it gets to the point where, you know, the old version, when she's like the kind of crone hunchback, she's like, I can't do this anymore. I need to get rid of this. Like, we need to stop this experience. So she goes to get the termination, I guess, like serum to kill the younger body. And she's trying to go through with it. And then, of course, you know, have to make the worst decision possible. She gets maybe like 2/3 of the syringe of the liquid in, and then she's like, oh my god, what am I doing? This is like the only part of me that I actually like. I can't have this happen. So she tries to bring it back and like tries to switch back into the younger body, and because she's fucked things up so much, it actually just gets both of them conscious at the same time. And so it's at that moment that, first of all, she's technically both of them, but also neither of them. And it's delicious in the sense of like, of course this is the kind of thing that happens, but at the same time I'm glad they went there, because I wasn't sure that they would. And then also it then proceeds with the younger version murdering the older version, because she's like, what the fuck, you were trying to kill me, now I'm gonna kill you, which, you know, is also gonna fuck the younger version up for later down the road, but she's not thinking about that in the moment. And I thought that like that entire fight scene in my mind was, again, just bringing the subtext to the text in terms of how Hollywood pits them against each other, because at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, there's only this one opportunity. It can't be for both of us, kind of thing. But the rules and the nature of Hollywood have been set up to engender those fights so that people don't get to kind of have solidarity against the real power structure, which is the shitty producer and all the other people. And of course, you know, killing the older self then sets herself up for a disaster down the line, because the way that it's explained in the movie, you can only stabilize in your younger form if you're able to get this spinal fluid from the older self. And if the older self is dead, you can't get that anymore. So very quickly she finds out, oh fuck, I've deeply fucked up.
Mm-hmm. And it's extra fucked up that every time she has the spark of, oh, I fucked up, it doesn't stop her. There's a weird admiration I had for her sheer willpower, even when it was just doing the wrong thing. I could not believe the things that were not able to stop her. No matter how decrepit her body became, she kept trying to go. Falling apart, actually, literally, could not stop her. She had to be completely destroyed. When I think about what I'm saying there, it makes it even more tragic. Somebody with that kind of willpower could do many or just one great thing for others or themselves, and all of that just went into, I need to be pretty and liked and useful. And it was just squandered on that. And yes, like, let me try to paint it out to anybody who maybe is thinking, where's the TF? TF, yes, is in, I thought she was just kind of gonna age, because the finger, again, it seems like old and necrotic at the same time. It's really interesting. Yeah. But then when I'm like, okay, so I guess she's gonna look older, right? But no, it's different. It's worse than that. It's a different kind of decrepit, and that's more like a creature that's drained of its life. Like humans don't quite age that way.
Yeah.
And the hunchback thing, like, you've seen hunchback like people, really, but there was a greater distortion of her body. If you know how bodies are supposed to be, and there are people that got very old, and yeah, you could talk about the very saggy titties and all that stuff, whatever, wrinkly skin. That was way more, far, far more than just, oh, she's very, very old. She was really turned into some completely different kind of creature, just drained literally and figuratively of her life. And then it kept going. The movie keeps going. I told you. So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think the moment everyone's kind of waiting for really comes to fruition after she's killed her older self, because she's starting to fall apart again, and she's like, oh my god, what the fuck am I gonna do? And she remembers, oh well, there was that serum that my old version of me used to create me, and it's supposed to make a better version of yourself. Surely I can just go use that and everything will be hunky-dory and nothing bad will ever happen. And of course, this is, again, I feel like this is just pulling on TF tropes, because it's like going back to reuse the serum that says do not use again. I mean, like, it's so transparent. But when she goes to do this, obviously it does not go well. And this is where we really get into the kind of Cronenberg fly experience, because the thing that gets birthed out of her younger self is this like horribly disfigured monstrosity that has like multiple versions of the same part in like different places where they shouldn't be. Like, she's got like a mouth on her chest, she has like 4 tits, like I think she has like this mass on half of her face, and just like so many, like the arms are in the wrong places, there's like
sticking out of
her
back, there's her original face just sticking like out. It's like pasted onto her back, but she's never able to close her mouth.
It's literally, I have a mouth and I must scream, basically.
Yeah.
It's horrifying, and it is incredibly well fucking done. Always prosthetics. Like,
okay. So I want to describe what you see. The first sequence is incredibly fucking interesting, because you do see her flesh like swell, and you hear like the groany kind of wet noises. Okay, good. They did those really well. And then they tap into the thing that you see in, like, the first scene in the movie is a syringe injecting an egg yolk, just, egg cracked on a surface. They inject it, and the yolk spawns another yolk. Seems identical, Mm-hmm. So you see like the flesh just like writhing and stuff like that, and then you look at the eye, and the eye slides in such a way. Okay, like you see the iris, you see the pupil divide, and then like go off to the side of the eye, and you don't see it anymore. And then you see another eye push its way over it. So there's more eyes in her head, and that's when shit gets really confusing. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, wait a minute, so she's not gonna actually change, is she? Technically. But yeah, then it's just like, oh, so she divides. And like, oh, okay. So there's the thing that gets mentioned about the monster that she ends up creating and becoming. There's something called the it's like the activation, the activator, or something.
The activator,
yeah, the activator. That's the thing that causes that whole thing in the first place, the entire process. They want you to use it once and throw it away. She did not. So in her desperation, as her formerly perfect self is falling apart, she just does that for a Hail Mary, and that's what happens. That is why they said that you're not supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And that sequence is far more extreme because, you know, she's missing teeth at this point. She is her eyes divide into many in her head as they slide around.
So many eyes.
Yeah, and like her head isn't like stretching or distorting to make room for that, so it's extra fucking weird, and it's a very cool effect. And like, okay, so she's starting to burst out, and it starts off looking like, okay, it's the same kind of gross, horrific emergence that happened the first time. So it's like, okay, so what's going to happen? But very quickly, you start to see that it's not going to be the same. And then you get the horrible monstrosity. And it's so fucking weird and sad. And if I also have to stress, this monster, I would love to, maybe I can actually still tweet at some of the people in that movie. I want to know who is the fan of the Resident Evil remake, the first remake on GameCube. Who the fuck watched that and decided, yes, I want to make Lisa Trevor and put her in a fucking movie? Because that's what it was. That's what it fucking was. It's great. It's great. Yes, I love how they did all the effects and the transitions and like the splitting of the two. It's and the design. Oh god, there's like a certain kind of thing that a lot of people, I guess, are like pigeonholed into doing. And it's like, make a scary monster, make a scary monster. It's like, yes, I know that people consider that scary. This was actually really mortifying and just awful. I know people often will say that I make body horror. This is the shit, guys. This is actual body horror.
This is actual body horror.
I do not make this. Not even close. I'm not even trying to, and that's not what I'm aiming for. But that is body horror.
Yeah. And one of the incredible things about it is, like, because a lot of this is very much heightened reality, like it's clearly making a point. So, you know, there's certain things in which you're like, people wouldn't necessarily potentially do X, Y, Z, but this like monstrosity that she becomes, it decides, okay, I'm gonna still go to host this New Year's Eve thing I was supposed to host, and she like dresses herself up and tries to like curl what is little left of her hair, like in a curling iron, and it just like breaks off because it's not even like strong enough to do that. And she cuts out a picture of her old self and just pastes it on to her face with lipstick drawn around the mouth. And she shows up at the door to go on stage, and they're just like, where have you been? You know, like, come on, we've got to go on with this show. And it's that elevated kind of surrealism that, first of all, as Libra said, like, is almost like Beavis and Butthead, like, but also it kind of, again, is there to drill home the point, to the point of making you uncomfortable, that like these people don't view human women as people. They're viewed as things in this industry, and they're just like, well, this is close enough to the thing, so go on stage. And they literally set her coming onto the stage to the fucking 2001 Space Odyssey, genesis of like sentience music. I forget what it's called, but anyways, you know what I mean. You know the song. And like she even goes on again wearing like a very clearly cut out picture, and she's trying to talk but can't really talk properly, and nobody's really questioning it at first. They're just like, okay. And it's only when, of course, the mask falls off that everyone's like, oh my god, it's a monster. And it just devolves into like Evil Dead levels of like cartoonish like blood everywhere, and, you know, body parts dismembering and everything. And again, it's to just illustrate the point of, you know, what they're kind of going for. But that entire sequence, like, to me, pushed the movie just from like a 9 out of a 10 to like an 11 out of 10, because again, not only was it committing to its message and doubling down and making sure you would think, oh my god, surely the movie's over, and it just keeps going, but also I think that like kind of heightened surrealism allows you to be a little bit of disconnected from like the grotesque horror of what you're seeing, because it's so over the top that you're like, oh, I'm not like truly horrified in this moment. Like, I'm horrified for her, and I was leading up to this, but at least I can appreciate this sequence now with a little bit of like disconnection or disassociation, because if I think a bit too hard, it's horrifying. But that like level of surrealism allows you to actually like really truly appreciate it, in my opinion, and just makes the like inevitable ending that much more sad, because at the end of the day, like, she just wanted to have attention and love again that she felt she wasn't getting. And I mean, she got a lot of attention in that final moment, but her body's still breaking down because of not having the stabilizer fluid and how you weren't supposed to use the activator more than once. And so it ends with her like kind of dissolving on her star on the Walk of Fame, but she gets like one last view up at the stars that are almost like sparkles, and she almost imagines it's like a celebration of her before she dies. And just goddamn that ending. I just, wow. Yeah. It ends basically with the same shot that opens the movie too, which is always a delicious kind of thing to do, because it opens with showing the star on the Walk of Fame getting installed, and then like it getting admired at first, and then people start caring less and less about it, and then it gets like cracked and people spill food on it and all this stuff. And so it ends with her like dying on it and having like this like bloody mess on it, and then it just gets cleaned the next day by like a street cleaner, and that's it. It's such a well done movie. It's so well put together and so well thought out, and just, yeah, like watching it not only was like, Libra, I know you mentioned like who on that crew played the Resident Evil remake. I also just gotta say, like, the level of like tropes that get referenced as part of the movie make it clear that also, I think, whoever was involved, like someone along the way, maybe it was directly the screenwriter director, maybe it was someone else, I don't know, but like they clearly have an understanding of what the transformation medium is, and the choosing of like the worst option in every case was very much like at first, oh well, this will be interesting, but the further you go, you're like, oh my God, please stop. And it's like, no, we're not stopping. We're not going to give you the comforting thing that maybe you wanted. We are going to see this to the bitter fucking end. And you are going to sit here and watch it Clockwork Orange style. And you're going to fucking appreciate it. And that was the correct approach, in my opinion.
Yep. I also want to emphasize that I know that there are the people who like to really double down and triple down and quadruple down and just do the more thing and ha. I don't want that tea heat. No, you don't want this. You don't want any of this.
You definitely don't want any of this. I don't think if anyone watches this movie and comes away with, wow, I wish that happened to me, I would love to have a chat with them, because what?
Yeah.
Please explain it to me.
Yeah, I just don't think it's healthy. And also, okay, so I want to talk about the actual breakdown, because it's and it's like, oh, what do you mean actual breakdown? The most literal way you could do it. It was reputation. It was sense of self. It was physical. They really took every aspect of personhood and put it on display to absolutely watch it get destroyed. So, yeah, she's on stage trying to talk. It's like a really hokey scene. And, I kind of wanted to laugh, but I didn't. Not because I thought it would be inappropriate, but because it's a very silly scene. But it's just, again, it's so surreal that it's too weird to laugh at, and if you care, it's too fucked up to laugh at, no matter how dumb the people are. They're pointing at her, and the camera zooms in, and that really hokey horror movie style, like, it's a monster, they're yelling, shoot the monster, kill the monster. Actual
screaming.
Yeah, actual things that they're yelling. And I'm just sitting there like, wow, she's just talking on a microphone and you people are just shouting for murder. Okay, this is pretty fucking dumb. I'm not taken out of the movie yet, though. And so eventually they start actually pushing her around. Like elementary school bully shit where nobody actually beats the fuck out of you. They're actually just pushing you until you fall. But
it's somebody Carrie-esque almost.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Especially with the following thing that happens. So the whole thing of like growing out of the previous body and everything, and oh man, here's an epiphany. Maybe you'd agree. Indeed, the more that she produced, I would argue that she kind of not just emerged what was supposed to be her ideal self, but also the real her. And the real her was pretty fucked up deep down. Like, yeah, it's tragic. And then, as she was getting worse, you were seeing just how bad she was getting. And she became worse in every way. Now, I broke off. They're shoving her around. Somebody comes at her with an actual chair, and because her flesh is just decrepit and fucked up and partly mutated and everything, chunks and blood, suddenly decapitated, but not dead, and emerging from where the head was, or the head-like structure, I should actually say, like something else begins to emerge, and its mouths and its mass
and eyes.
And eyes. And now people are like, okay, now I'm fucked up. But like a part of her falls off. It's like one of her fucked up arms. And she sprays blood everywhere in this theater. Everywhere. Like an actual fire hose. Again, it's so fucking dumb. But in context, when you're watching the movie, I'm just kind of there like, wow. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's really like holy shit. It's just an incredible fucking sight. They lean into it so well. Her spewing body is walking down the hallway that she's gone back and forth since the beginning of the movie. She is spraying it with all of her blood. She has an ungodly amount of blood to just spew, okay?
Yeah.
And she just and she fucking puts herself everywhere. And she's running, and she's just like trying to go, I guess, wherever, but she's running out of that studio all fucked up, dripping the blood from that wound that finally stopped gushing, and that weird mass where like her head used to be. And as she's running, her leg just explodes from her own pressure and from just degrading.
Yeah.
And her body like just splats onto the ground into more chunks. Horrible gore.
Yeah, and that's where you get that ending with the face like of her old self struggling to get onto her star so it can have that one last moment of like looking up and seeing like the sparkles that she imagines are like, confetti falling.
Yeah, looking up at the night sky through the palm trees on her own star and everything. And that's also what makes me say that she had an immense willpower, because every single time I thought she couldn't move around, or like maybe something was going to break, I always thought something was just going to snap. And it's like, oh, whoops, that's it. But no, it kept going. Remarkably strong and durable. It's freaky. It's freaky in a good way, and I think it lends itself to just the absurdity of the whole movie too. Yeah. But it really did take a complete destruction to stop her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. Yeah. Nothing. Not having a body, just her face. She would keep
it wasn't
going.
Enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to stop her. One of the things that I keep thinking about a lot with the movie is also like, I think there was an implicitness to go back to something I was saying earlier. There was like an implicitness of like the younger versus older versions fighting each other being kind of a metaphor for the younger and older actors fighting for the same like slice of the pie in Hollywood. And one of the ways it gets really well kind of like illustrated is the guy who initially gives her the like information about the substance. He's like this young guy in the hospital after her car accident, and after she's like had the finger get fucked up but nothing else, she's at a cafe and this older guy basically is like, hey, I wanted to like see how you were doing. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she looks at him and she realizes that this must be the old version of the young guy from the hospital. And he's like asking, if she's like doing okay, basically, and like is her younger self taking more and more away from her. And she's like, oh no, it's like totally fine. And he's like, don't know about that, honey, because they'll just keep eating away at you. And it was like the line was like eating away or something, but that really stuck with me because in a literal sense, she wasn't getting the food that she was supposed to be getting when she wasn't in that body. So it was indeed taking food away from her. But also it was that sort of metaphorical eating away inside of herself, of her hatred for herself growing even more. Because let's be clear here, like, the substance absolutely makes things worse in terms of your own image of yourself. Like, sure, you might get to, take some time and be your younger self, but it just highlights when you go back to your regular self, like, wow, I suck, and like all this stuff. And I felt really like there was this, and I don't think this part was necessarily fully like supposed to be there, because I think it was focused more on just like feminine dysphoria, but like I think there's a lot of reads you can put in there from a dysphoric lens on so many different axes that really resonates for a lot of people. And I think that in particular, when we think about like transformation stuff, you hear a lot about, oh, I just wish I could be something else. I wish I could be this. I wish I could be that. And the idea of like you getting to experience like a little bit of that, but then having to go back and share, like this movie illustrated that sort of anguish in a way that I've never really seen examined in a proper way. But boy, God, did it fucking ever. 'Cause man, now I think about all the like transformation media where like, oh, you get to have some time as like the other thing, but then you have to go back to your normal self. And it's like, holy fuck, the way in which that'll just magnify the dysphoria you feel in your quote unquote regular self is soul crushing. So it's almost like very much be careful what you wish for when it comes to like the substance and everything in general, because it's like you only get this some of the time, not all of the time, and you have to go back and sit with your normal self at the end of the day still and parse that out. And again, I think that's a really interesting message to take away from like a transformation movie, because generally that's not really something we hear about. Like, yeah, we hear about like, shapeshifters in movies all the time, but we don't really ruminate on what is it like to have like been doing all that shapeshifting and then go back and then have to be stuck as your human self for a bit while you like recover or whatever. And how does that human self view itself now? How do you look at yourself and, reconcile the life you were just leading before you had to come back to this?
Sorry to cut in, but I just really want to like emphasize something else, that when we talk about switching bodies, you suddenly come to awareness next to the old you every single time. There's always a reminder that you are forced to come back to, or you'll die. And it's the thing that you don't ever want to. It's the thing that you don't ever want to leave either, and the growing disdain that you have to do it at all. And that's another big difference between the kind of transformation that all of us think, as I have argued, thing become other thing. The substance and structure of the thing is altered, as to make it different, rather than just be like, oh, alternate universe you, that's you changed, right? No, not really. I just think that it's a very holy shit. There isn't much that really explores that sort of thing. Not in this way. Like I there are stories where you look at your body, you look at yourself. There's an actual out of body experience in a bunch of different ways. And it's just like, whoa. But like this, where the point is to get away from it, but you can never go too far, and you can never truly leave it behind. And not and in a lot of cases there are people who want to go back. Oh, your soul has been divided from your body, you want your body back. The dead the dead crave the living, so they'll try to get a body back, or their body. But what if you don't want it? And that is another thing that like really shapes the horror of the entire situation and the sadness. It's just so fucking sad. From
absolutely.
Minute one, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to watch this poor lady just fall apart, right? And
both metaphorically and literally.
Yeah, and I know Zoe talks about the performance and being Oscar worthy and everything like that, but the optimist in me likes to think that at this age, she's probably worked through a lot of these emotions and is probably at peace or like beat them or something like that, or manages it very well. But I really feel like when she was having those breakdowns about herself and she was like smearing her makeup and she was screaming and everything, I can feel the times in her life where she just fucking had it.
Yeah.
And all she wanted to, and there wasn't really anything she could do about it. She had to get up, do the fucking thing, live to the next day, and not really understand why the fuck it was worth the while in the first place. And not even able to fully believe that people value her. Yeah. The actual her.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real death of the identity in this movie, because by the end of it, where is the actual her? I mean, I guess it's this random face that's stuck on to like this monstrosity that's a combination of her younger and older self, but like she loses truly everything, and especially chiefly her identity. But yeah, I think the thing I just keep coming back to in my head is like the fact that I think most of us, like, to relate it back to, transformation fans, like if we were offered the choice to spend half our time in the form we love and half our time just as your normal human self, I feel like almost everyone would take it. But the psychological impact that has on you is just something I've never truly seen explored like this. And it honestly made me reevaluate some shit, because like it was just truly heartbreaking to see how dysphoric the whole thing was for her. And like, again, like her normal older self, whatever you want to call it, obviously was getting worse as well because of like pushing the limits. And so obviously you could be like, well, that just wouldn't happen with me. But even if you like perfectly respected the balance and always made sure that it didn't like go badly or anything like that, you're still stuck with the other like human version of yourself. And I don't know, I think it was almost like the absence of being able to choose when was almost like the real like tragedy there, because you could only really do it up to 7 days, and then after that you were like skirting danger, and then you'd have to like stay in your other form for an equivalent amount of time. And I think the fact that you don't really get to choose which days is like which form or whatever is the thing that truly would kind of exacerbate that sort of dysphoria. And again, I think a lot about that, because I think it's a universal experience for a lot of different people across a variety of different axes. And that really made the message of the movie resonate that much harder. Like, I don't think, to use it as an example, just because it comes to mind, like werewolves, of course, are something where, there are two forms. There's the human self, there's the wolf self. Obviously, there's a transition between the two. I don't think generally in a lot of media you hear them talk about, well, how does the werewolf feel when they're not a werewolf? Or when they're not a wolf, right? And like, how does that affect them? And it's been explored in like a decent amount, I think, of TF media, like that's community made, but in media like that gets published like this, I've never seen it before. And it truly, I don't know. I truly felt like it got into it in a way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, well, that's because when it comes to people being werewolves, sometimes they do the thing where they retain senses or understand that they'll be back anyway. And then in some media, they can even control the shit and all this other stuff. Stuff that you can like indulge in, be at peace at, know that, oh yeah, the day is coming again. Even though like whatever, I get to indulge finally. It gets painted in that way, not really the inverse. So that's just to further your points. And also just I so it's further another point of yours when you said that you think that it could apply to pretty much any kind of person, and of course it can, because even though this is very much centered around how women are treated in Hollywood, who is the one that gives her the way, the means to actually get the substance in the first place? It's a guy. And
yeah.
I remember when I first saw the guy who would ultimately give it to her, and I was thinking already when I was watching this movie, and some of you might actually know, it's a fairly popular webcomic for people who like webcomics, and it's called Beauty Water. And I'm like, this is a Beauty Water type thing. It's different, and I'm glad it's different. But I saw this guy, and his face was unusually perfect, and I'm like, you use whatever the fuck this substance is.
Yep.
And it's just like, yeah, there was just some guy who felt deeply insecure about himself, did it, and decided, hey, you look like you could use it. You seem to look like how I was feeling and looking about myself. So here, for your consideration. And it's just a little blip to remind you that even though, yes, this is definitely about all the stuff that we've said, it could be anybody. It really fucking could be. He was a nurse. Yeah. He was a nurse, and it's like, man, you felt the urge to get rid of yourself like that. And then he pops up later in the movie as a very old,
I mentioned that before,
just out man. Yeah, but the thing that he said, but like just when he was just like saying that, it starts to take away the reason that you like live. Not even the reason to live. It's like the fact that you matter. It was something more than that. I wish I could remember.
You forget that you matter. Yeah,
exactly. Like you don't matter. You start to feel like the means to the end to the other thing, which already doesn't feel like you. So you lose your identity in that respect too, because if you don't buy into the "you are one" mantra that this mysterious voice tries to instill in you to try to avoid accidents, you are going to feel different ways about the other person. The other person has looks and success and likability and confidence, which is not you.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're not important anymore, are you? Or at least that's how you feel. God damn. True identity death.
Yeah, that's true identity death right there, in a way that I have not seen so viscerally before in a piece of media like this and explored so thoroughly. It's funny too, this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm going to mention it anyways because it did come to mind when I was watching it. The showing the personalities kind of like starting to develop as like separate entities, or like not viewing themselves as like the same person. And like, seeing yourself after you like, change and all that stuff. In a weird way, it reminded me of fursuiting. This is definitely a stretch that was definitely not inferred, but I think about people who like, when they wear their fursuit, they act slightly differently, and like they might have a name for it, or like they act in a certain way or whatever. And there's like that performance of like, well, this is what society expects me to be when I'm like this person. And I wonder how much that played into how, she presented herself as a younger self, and how that like led to that kind of fracturing and the like extended identity death. Like that enclosed cognition is a phenomenon that we see time and time again. And it just, I don't know, in a weird way, reminded me of fursuiting. And I think that's just because I'm too furry brained, but I did think about that when I was watching, and I was like, interesting.
I think it's a fine thing to try to draw a parallel between, because like the movie, there is a certain amount of time that you can spend in it, and you're forced to go back. Yeah. And maybe you feel certain ways about yourself when you have to go back.
Yeah.
But if you stay in that way, then you can't have a life either. And there you go. There's that whole balancing thing again.
Yeah.
It's about presentation, the kind of person you want to be versus the person that you perceive yourself to be. I want to draw that distinction very clearly.
Yes.
It's not what you are, it's what you believe you are. And that is what's going to dictate how you do anything or push on or don't. That is, this is the really cool shit, man. This is the really cool shit when you start becoming something else. And you don't necessarily have to become an animal, or like in this case, there is like a literal monstrosity that emerges from all this. But at the core, still the person. Sometimes the personhood like lingers in such a way where you're like, oh, they're erased and replaced by the beast. But it's like, no, the person just keeps being replaced by worse and worse versions of themselves. And no matter what, it's always her. No matter how good or bad she looks, it's always her. And she just can't fucking wrap her head around it because, again, she comes to believe, and it's weird because you could argue that she could both believe and accept it, because let's do philosophy on this sometime. But, she just starts to believe that she is not that person, whichever version she is. I'm not that. No, I'm not that. No, you're all you. Even the incredibly mangled mass that walks up on stage, that's her. It's always her. It doesn't matter that the other version is dead, broken open like a cocoon in the fucking bathroom of her house. Yeah. It doesn't matter that she's bloody chunks on the street. It's all her.
Despite everything, it's still her.
And yet, like, it's the core of her that just gets worn down into like a really simple shape. You know how people say there are facets to people and their personality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So okay, because I wanted to know exactly what the word meant. Maybe people don't know what a facet is. It simply means a side. It's a two-syllable word for a side. Faceted diamond. How many sides does it have? How many flat surfaces? Cube has facets, a certain amount of facets. So, it's just facets worn down. The person she is becomes just a thing craving certain kinds of attention, certain kinds of adoration, and that's how you cease to be a person. Like, that is the last bit of her.
Yeah.
Fuck me. It's an incredibly good movie. If you're irony poisoned, I don't think you're gonna like it, and well, whatever, I like it, and you're not gonna stop anybody else from liking it, thankfully. But seriously, without getting bitter about that, I'm so impressed. The movie looked great. The movie was acted amazingly. It was shot very fucking well.
Extremely well.
No boring shots. There were interesting and funny and fucked up camera work. Just that's some fucking art. And I think that if you can hate a movie for what it's doing and less about it being like a product that didn't satisfy you, and I hope at least you understand what I'm getting at, Zill.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Yeah, if you can feel that way about it, I think it's a piece of art. I think it's doing its job. That movie does it. There's nothing that really looks like it. I know I compared it to like the Barbie movie, but really fucked up. But that's only because I haven't seen a movie with color that bright and clear and visuals that clear since the Barbie movie, where it just unabashedly was just like, we don't need to tone anything the fuck down. Or are they going to the real world? Well, Barbie's going to be the brightest fucking thing on the screen. In this movie, everybody's bright. Even the total pieces of garbage. Even the filth is bright. you know?
Yeah.
It's so cool to see people doing that sort of thing, and therefore it gives the whole movie identity. It's like the horror in the daylight horror. That's the thing that I also like thinking about ever since Resident Evil 5, because the opening to Resident Evil 5 is extremely good, and it's scary, and it all happens in the bright African sun, and it's like, fuck, so you can do this, and it's so uniquely upsetting, and yes, it's just no matter what day or night you can see clearly, and it's just scary and terrible and really fucked up. You don't miss a thing as long as you're paying attention.
Yeah. I one of the last things I just want to mention, it kills me in a way that once again, this incredible TF movie has come out of France because the director is French. It was a co-production between like the US, the UK, and France, but like Coralie Fargeat, who's the director, at the end of the day, like, she's the one who wrote it and directed it and is mainly responsible for it. And by God, did she do an incredible job. And I mean, look, she lists like David Cronenberg and John Carpenter and David Lynch as her inspirations. You fucking see it in this movie. You 100% fucking see every element of that in this fucking movie. And I'm just, again, really glad that, you know, this movie was made and that she was able to create it in the way that matched her vision, because her vision was incredible and it gave us something to chew on for years to come. So I just, I cannot, like you said, Libra, like, this is art. This is what art, when we say something is art, it's like
filmmaking. More particularly, people say, oh, the art of filmmaking is lost. It's dead. Yeah, I get how it's on life support, but it still manages to happen. This is one of those examples that I'm so fucking thankful for. And
when people say that you can't make good movies anymore with like out having like an insanely bloated budget, just want to, like, for the record, this movie cost $17.5 million to make. That's it. For the quality of prosthetics and the actors involved and everything, that is like insane to me. So when you see like, oh, like fucking Marvel movie, $250 million budget and they couldn't make shit work, that's because they're not paying their people properly and are crunching them. This was something that was clearly made with love and people were putting their heart and soul into it, and you can fucking tell. And that was $17.5 million. So I refuse to believe that you cannot make like incredible TF movies on small budgets, because it's fucking possible. We've seen it displayed time and time again, and I just fucking hope that they continue to do shit like that, you know?
Not only that, but I just, in case there is like the two listeners who are like this, if you think that adding progressive shit to a movie brings it down, dude, there is more ass and horny bait in that movie. And I'm not saying ironically. They leaned into that shit so hard that I tried to fucking make sure that I'm like, okay, remember that I'm not supposed to enjoy this, because, yes, it's all very conventionally attractive. Like, god damn, do they know how to shoot fucking horny bait? What a fucking contrast. And also to shoot home the message of like, hey, are you objectifying them right now? I mean, oh, you can't make movies with like ash and tits and whatever. Well, they fucking did it, and it's not even ironically sexually fucking provocative or arousing. It just is. There is so fucking much of it. If you were to just cut those bits out and show them to people, you would be like, what sort of brain dead, misogynist, sexist fucking garbage is this? That is how it is.
And that was part of the point, because it's skewering it, right? So,
and I couldn't help it. I'm just like, oh man, it sucks that she's actually hot, but not just hot. Yes, the idea of perfection, of a perfect body.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I yes, people like those exist, and there are very, very few of them. But this was one of them, and I couldn't get over it. It was because the movie was framing, all this absurdist shit and its surrealism. When you see this fucking perfect body, I'm like, wow, there's nothing out of place. There isn't a single hair where a woman, shouldn't have one. It was like, how? It was, haha, inhuman almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. They casted it, they acted it, they fucking made it look great up and down. I think they were very clever with every single setting, the set, the house, the fucking let me see. There was mostly like the set, the house, and what was the other? Oh yes, the facility where she kept making her pickups.
Yes.
Yeah, that shit. There was really like 3 or 4 main locations. It's not like they never strayed, but that was really fucking good. And even the apartment transforms with her.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and it's so fucking cool. And it even like it doesn't just display even the downward the fucking nosedive. It actually struggles with her.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I gotta say this before I forget. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was watching this movie was The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is Oscar Wilde's book from the 1890s. And if you watch the movie and you think about the book, if you've read it, the similarities are fucking terrifying. And I don't know if like she was inspired by it at all, or if it's just coincidence, but the parallels are incredible when you notice them. So I just wanted to mention that because it was something that was on my mind when I was watching this movie, and I was like, holy shit, they really made like a Picture of Dorian Gray into a horror movie. And that's really what it felt like at times.
So if you wanted certain audiences to understand what this movie is, it's Beauty Water meets The Picture of Dorian Gray, just to flatten the fucking thing and get people to watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could describe it honestly when I say that. Like, yeah, I think it's a decent way to tell certain people who know enough about certain kinds of media to like be like, oh, okay. But even I think that's doing it a disservice because I don't really think it should be likened to anything, even if parts of it do remind me of other things.
Yeah. It's its own thing, to be clear. It's just I did think about that at one point.
I'm not even taking it that way. I'm speaking for myself and also to people who may misunderstand me, which I don't know. Amazing movie. The substance has substance, and I don't care if you fucking roll your eyes. It does. It fucking does, man. Also, like a few other things, just incidental shit that I like. Again, the egg as the first thing that you see dividing. Every time she goes out, she's wearing a yellow coat. It's almost the same shade of yellow. There's that. I love that. The other thing is like the facility is kind of funny and kind of fucked up. And tell me if you feel this way too. When you get to this fucking dirty ass alleyway, you have this special card with a number on it, and you use that to enter. And the shutter only goes up part way.
Yes.
So you're forced to crawl under it, which, think about it, it's a very loud way of saying you're going to debase yourself for this, aren't you? And you're going to do it every single time. You are going to get on your hands and knees for it every single time. There's
graffiti in the alleyway leading up to it as well, warning people not to do it.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so there's all those fucking touches. There is the incredibly cartoonishly awful but genuinely hateable producer who, whenever he's on camera, always uncomfortably close. Fish-eyed in the lens. And it's like, you know how like Ren and Stimpy was with the close-ups, gross out shots? That's him anytime he's on camera.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anytime he's on camera. Just to make sure you fucking hate him. And it's so good because they lean into it. Like, isn't this going to be too much? Isn't this going to be like hitting people in the head? Yeah, do it. Do it real fucking hard. Make sure that you feel bad whenever he's on screen, because that's how he is. God, how the fuck, dude? Acting magic. Like, oh, you're that terrible piece of shit. Like, no, man, I just did the role. Stop.
Oh my god. Well, Yeah, everyone should go watch The Substance.
Mm-hmm.
I did have some audience questions if we wanted to tackle those before we close out for today.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first question I have is from Professor Scritch. And so the question is, we all have TF folks in our life who are important to us, and maybe we'd love to see them experience TF just as much as we'd want to experience ourselves. Now imagine you have a bottle of TF potion where if you drink the whole thing, you transform 100%, but if you share it with someone else, you could get 250% or split it 3 ways, you'd all get 33%, etc. What would you do? Would you keep it all to yourself or would you share? And if you'd share, how many people would you include?
I would share it, and I'd probably include about... Actually, wait a minute. I mean, there's the implication that you could choose the thing. At least that's what comes to mind.
Yes, you would get to pick the thing, I believe, but it would have to be the same thing for everyone.
Shit, I'd give it to my trans friends. They can split it.
Damn. That's a good choice, honestly.
That's my answer.
I'm more basic. I mean, I would probably... It's funny. I saw this question and I was like, I know exactly what I would say, and now I've watched this movie and I'm like, But I'd probably go 50-50 with someone else who wanted to become a Lombax. But also, like, I would want to drink my half first to, like, see exactly how it ends up before sharing the other half in case I'm, like, not fully satisfied with it. Maybe that makes me selfish. I don't fucking give a shit. But I think, like, I'd want to make sure the 50% is, like, sufficient. You know what I mean? So.
Okay. So you'd want a good chunk of Lombax, and then you'd give the other half to someone else.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I just realized something, that if you could really stretch it, because conceptually, it's like the whole male-female, alleged binary, right? And sometimes you could have, like, oh, they don't have the right chromosomes. So it's like, yes, that's right. Enough. Like, everything is in place except for the chromosomes. Oops, and throbbing quotations.
Yeah.
and how thin could you spread that to the people who want it, like, who really want it? And I think, and that's another reason that I'd want to give it to my trans friends.
Hell yeah. Okay, I have another question from Fire, and the question is, there's a trope of humanity dream when someone turns into an animal and loses their humanity. What aspects of your person do you think would still persist even without your quote-unquote humanity?
I think it would be the need for a physical closeness. So I guess something that would carry over. I'd want to get close, and that just calms me and makes me feel good.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good answer. I was struggling with this one, honestly, because, like, nothing immediately came to mind. I guess if I had to pick something, I think the curiosity would be the thing that would persist, because I think above all other things, and maybe this is also just a function of my ADHD, but I'm always curious in learning new things and finding out new information, and I feel like that's a pretty, like, base urge in a lot of ways. So, I really would think that would be something that would, like, persist no matter what form it was that I was in, potentially for detriment, because curiosity is not always a good thing, but I think that would be one thing that would persist.
The spiritual successor to the substance would be the curiosity.
Yeah, pretty much.
The curiosity made the cat.
Curiosity made the cat. I like that. And then the last one I have here is from Other Side, and the question is, wholesome and happy TF versus dark angsty TF. Which do you prefer? Or do you have a preference or a combination of the two together that works best?
I always prefer some kind of combination. There's just a lot to enjoy. Here is your Berserk mention of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
It is, again, often characterized as being an incredibly oppressively bleak setting where nothing is good and there's no hope and everything like that. And you know what? I get it. Except when you read it, that is patently fucking untrue. The pain and the ordeals give way to something eventually. Not like so far ahead that you're just kind of like, oh my god, what did I go through all this for? Like, that's it. There's something. There's always something to look forward to. And I don't think I could possibly enjoy Berserk if it wasn't like that. And same thing, like, I really can't stand saccharine shit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. It's, yeah, both are bad. I don't want overly sweet, like, finally whatever all the fucking time. It takes me right out of it. And I don't need people to fucking suffer like constantly. It's one of the reasons I just can't get into Warhammer. It's like, oh, Grimdark comes from that for a reason, and I'm just really not that interested in the thought experiment either. So yeah, I think I would always take some kind of mix. If you think I would prefer more angst or more wholesomeness, I can't really say. I know it's not really much of an answer. It depends. I don't really think about how much I need angst or whatever or wholesomeness, because the things I desire in transformation, I don't think really fit into either of those buckets. But I wouldn't exclude them either.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. I also feel like I fall somewhere in the middle. And again, it's like too much of one thing is never a good thing. And also, like, I think one thing is made better by the other existing. Like, a good transformation story, narrative, or what have you, should have some of both. And, I think about a lot of, like, the most, like, the pieces that really got me the most, be it, pool toys or Lombaxes or Pokemon or whatever. And, like, I think at the end of the day, the best ones that stick around with me are ones that are, they have a combination of, yes, you're getting something that you like, but also there's some unintended consequence, and that introduces tension to the narrative. Because without having both, you're never going to get that kind of tension in your narrative, and then it's just going to be flaccid, and no one likes that. So, I don't know. I really do think you need both in a good story or, scenario or what have you for it to really kind of hit.
But to nail down an answer, even if it's just to understand that you don't have one, I think it needs to have it. But can you have it? Is there any kind of scenario where you could prefer one over the other, or like a very particular mix?
A scenario where I could prefer one over the other?
Either one over the other, like the first part of the question asked. Like, you prefer wholesome, like entirely wholesome or entirely angst, or one with more angst or more wholesome? Is there any of those four options that you would just be like, yeah, sure, that's one I would often go for?
I feel like that's changed over time. I think at the moment right now, I probably would lean a little bit into a bit more wholesome than angsty. But I don't know, like, sometimes something that I might think of as quote unquote wholesome is really not. Like, I've been on the whole, like, jock TF kick whatever lately, and, like, I don't know, for some people, especially if there's, like, some implied, like, intelligence loss, that's not wholesome, right? It might seem like empowering from my perspective, but I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily feel that way. They might be like, actually, that's kind of angsty. So I also think it depends on, like, your personality when it comes to it. But regardless, if I did have to pick one, I guess I would pick leaning more towards wholesome. But again, I really think the best of has shades of both.
Yeah, okay. All right. Because I'm just drawing the distinction because I really can't pick from any of those four options. So that's what you get.
Hell yeah.
All right. So I really am grateful that you somehow got to watch this movie and got me to see it, because I got one more really good piece of media to think of if I want to draw from, I don't know, just from something inspired.
Yeah.
And it really feels like a dwindling amount of that sometimes. You were going to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like sometimes it can get more and more difficult to find shit that hits as hard as this, and so I am incredibly thankful that I was able to watch it and then kind of, like, spread the love. And now all of y'all know about it. So you should also go watch it and spread the love. Because, yeah, this is one I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. And I'm really glad that it was made.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to keep looking out for these kind of movies. And it's nice to do these every once in a while. It's tempting sometimes to just do the media review thing. It wouldn't even be off topic, but since we don't really get to do these very often, it's really nice when we get to. And also, again, it just furthers my points of the stuff is out there, and there is some really good stuff to appreciate. And I understand that everybody wants more. I want more too. I want more of a very particular thing that I want, that I hope somebody makes, and that I'm not able to make, blah, 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 blah. And that's a lot of people too. But there's so much to enjoy. And then you could take away from that and just, you have a whole new fucking appreciation for something else. And that's the whole keeping your mind open to stuff part.
100%. And I hope people continue to keep that mindset in mind too.
Mm-hmm. And that way it's easier to like do the staying TFE thing. I don't really like saying that. I'll admit. You say it.
Well, I always like saying it. So, I appreciate everyone who's listened to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it. And in the meantime, I hope that you all get 8 hours of sleep for Sleeptober and stay at a decent temperature amidst whatever weather you might be dealing with, and keep an open mind to films like The Substance and Stay TFE, and we'll see you back here again next week.
And remember that the darkness cast by a shadow is also meant to lead you to the source of light.
Ayo.